Hello to all. Thank you for connecting with us today in our Believe in Yourself, Believe in Your Business show. We have Clifford. Thank you, Clifford, for connecting with us. This is amazing. Uh, okay, today you know that I had a bad news that entered with me, like with my grandpa going out of this earth. But I know that he's in a better place, and that's something that I want to share even with everyone. Like, I am doing this really to connect with people and to help them to improve in their lives, starting to understand that really every belief that we have is going to help us to succeed or is going to stop us to grow in our lives. So that's the reason of this show. That's the reason of looking for people like you, Clifford, to be connecting with and to starting to create more awareness on all those things that are stopping us to become our best version. So thank you again, everybody that is connecting with us today. Thank you, Clifford, for being here with me today. Uh, in maybe a not that normal day for me, but at the end, a good day that I know that there is some celebration in heaven. So thank you, Clifford.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. And yeah, as I said, you and your family are in my heart, in my prayers. We're about supporting one another, and I appreciate you taking the time. So thank you.
Okay, so today I know that you have been like doing a lot of things, even in sports, in UFC, in different areas of your life. You started to move to started to do that in business, helping people thrive in their lives, and that is something that is in your heart also, like to help people to understand that that is key for their lives, how they show up in their lives. So I want to, before we start to talk about that thing that you are doing right now, I would love to understand who was Clifford before everything of this started to happen in your life. Who you were?
Yeah, yeah. So as I went through my journey, I had a lot of different things: fears, doubts, courage, action taking, non-action taking, and everything else in between. And so one thing that happened to me, it really happened 4, 5, and 6 were pivotal times in my life. Because when I was 4, my biological dad, I distinctively remember him driving away. And I remember in my mind, like, wow, people who are supposed to be there for you can just drive. They can just leave. And I didn't know what I was doing at the time, but I always found a way to reframe things and use it to my advantage. And so I reframed that in people can leave in your life, so you better get strong as hell. And that's what I focused on doing, was getting as strong as I possibly could. And when I was 5, my grandfather passed away, and that scared the living crap out of me. Like, I was a terrified little 5-year old, and just knowing like one day that I'm gonna pass. And I reframed that, and that one took a little bit longer, but I reframed that into I gotta live. I gotta live as much life as I can. And when it's time to go back home to the other side, it's time for me to go back home. So I'm gonna just live as much life as I can and enjoy the process. And when I was 6, my mom remarried to the guy I call dad to this day. And he was always a support system for me as I went through my journey. And it's not to say that you didn't butt heads, because you butt heads with your parents from time to time, but you learn lessons as well. And I knew, like, as I went through my process, people who are supposed to be there can leave. They can absolutely leave your life. But people that don't have to be there can choose to stay. And that's such a powerful piece to me, because as I go through my journey, it's, hey, I can be there for you, whether I was supposed to be there or whether I wasn't supposed to be there for you. I get the option to do that, and I want to do that because people deserve it.
And one thing that I hear from what you are saying, and I am going to emphasize that, is they can choose and you can choose, because at the end it's a decision really what you want to do. And sometimes we are thinking like, okay, maybe I am in this mess right now. I don't understand what is happening in my life. I don't understand why my grandpa died today, or I don't understand what happened. but you have a decision at that moment that you are going through those challenges. You can be like, okay, I have a decision that I have to take, and I have to take that decision. And what is going to be that decision? And that's what I see with what you are saying, like your new dad, if we can say it like that,
Hmm.
took a decision. I am going to help these guys. I am going to be here, and I am going to be your dad,
Yeah,
even when I am not supposed to be that dad. So that is huge.
yeah, I agree. Everything comes down to choice. Such a powerful thing.
So tell us a little bit of what happened with that. How was like the teenagers, like when then you started like, okay, now I start to believe in myself. You started to use the belief that your new dad had on you, or how happened that you started to believe in you to start to grow and start to become another person.
So I've always had support systems around me. And I say always had support systems because we get to choose what we're looking at. And
Mm.
I looked at things that helped me move forward as much as I could. Like I've had my doubts and my fears and things that seem bigger than life that I didn't think that I could conquer. But one thing my mom instilled into me was if I act on something long enough and I practice it long enough, I'll eventually become the thing that I'm practicing. And
Mm.
so I held onto that belief and just went after whatever I wanted to go after, learned lessons along the way. And yeah, it's been a fun ride.
And why did you enter to the UFC and started to become a fighter? What was behind that feeling or option or decision that you took? Like, I want this, and I am going to thrive on this area.
Yeah. So I have a competitive nature in me. Um and I like to say it's a healthy competitive nature because I want to win at all costs, but at all costs with integrity. I'm not going to try and lie, cheat, and steal to get a win. I'm going to do it in as much of an integrous way as I can, but I'm going to do everything in my power to get that win. And I I was so excited, thinking about even fighting because I know it's such a hard thing. And it was really aligned with everything that was me. I wanted to step onto a stage where I could speak to an audience of people. And one of my messages is love one another. And as I've built my brand out, it doesn't exactly make sense being this UFC fighter talking about how the world needs to love one another, but there's stories behind those messages. There's the story of saying you can love someone and be as competitive as you want to be. And that's what I love about the journey is I am a very, very competitive individual. Um, but I'll also love the component that I'm competing against.
And but if you remember, because I know that everything is created twice, and that is something that I am always saying, like, and I like
Mhm.
to say even to the people that is here listening, and maybe you have heard in a lot of programs that I do that, like I always say that because everything starts with your mind, and from there you start to have a thought that you start to nurture until you become the person, or you start to see the thing that you are planning. So in that part, when you started to have this thought like, I want to be a fighter, I want to start to do this, even if it was when you was a kid, or when was that process, how was that process of nurturing that idea to become that fighter?
Yeah. That's an interesting question. So apparently I've always had a fighter's mentality in me. Uh, was funny. My biological dad, he called me on my 39th birthday. That was the so we hadn't spoken since I was 4, and that was the second time that I had spoken to him since. But he said something that was really, really interesting about there was always a fighter inside of me. It was always in there. Um, and sometimes things are created twice, as you say. Something happens and it makes you see like, oh my goodness, I have this thing inside of me. I remember I had a bully that I was dealing with, and my dad actually told me to stand up for myself. And I didn't want to hurt anybody. It wasn't something that I wanted to do, but I remember pile driving the bully into the ground. And after that, we became friends. So you learn real quick that if you stand up for yourself, uh, people tend to back down and respect your boundaries.
Exactly. Wow. And how do you see that, like connecting with what you are doing now? How was that process to, or if you want to even say some stories about what happened in the UFC and when you were fighting, that
Mhm.
started to develop the person that you are right now?
Yeah, yeah. So what's so interesting, we're always developing ourselves, going through our process. And each day we wake up, we get to say, who do I want to be today? Who do I want to be? And am I going to practice being that person and being okay with being the person that we're practicing to be? And if we don't want to be that person, saying, how am I going to adjust and how am I going to change? What I loved about fighting, I had one coach, and this was before my fighting career even, but he says perfect practice equals perfect. And so it's do everything as perfectly as you can in the moment that you're doing it so you can stretch into a new perfect. And so that's what I focus on doing is the devils are in the details. So you really have to be detailed in your approach, in the way you're showing up, in the actions that you're taking. And it's not to say that you won't make mistakes, because you will, but it's to say if I give everything that I got, if I squeeze as much as I can out of life, life will show up for me. And so that's what happened in my fighting career, in and out. And I'll tell you, whether I won or whether I lost, as long as I was okay with what I did, getting prepared for that, it didn't matter. Now, it's not to say that I wanted to lose, because I never do want to lose. I love to win. And it's even to say sometimes I've lost and I've been kind of down because I did lose. But whenever I have a loss, I have an opportunity to win. And whenever I have a win, I have to maintain that so I don't lose. So every time is a new time. Whenever you're stepping in the cage and you're stepping out of the cage, you're still only as good as your next best win. So you're going through the process again. So you might as well enjoy the journey in the process.
Okay, let's go a little bit deep on that area because I know that is maybe where you have your greatness exactly. Because really, sometimes there is two things that I would like to know a little bit better,
Mm-hmm.
because I have also that part of I want to have perfect, and if something is not perfect, then I don't want to show up. Sometimes I have been dealing with that, and I helping like, okay, now it's better done than perfect. That is key. Uh, so how was that process with you? Like, okay, I need to be perfect. I need to be doing a perfect training, and suddenly you lose a fight, and it's like, oh, I was not perfect. Maybe I didn't like did everything perfectly.
Yeah, yeah. So it goes back to the teaching my mom gave me at a really young age. Ultimately, if I just keep putting in the repetition and putting in the repetition with intensity, things are going to show up for me. I'm going to see things work in the way that they need to. So I'll give an example. This was in fourth grade, where I was learning this book that was in Spanish. It was mostly Spanish, and I didn't even know how to speak Spanish. None of the kids knew how to speak Spanish, and the teacher actually had trouble reading the book too. Well, me and my mom had practiced that book for so many times. Like, it was really late at night and she wouldn't let it go. She just had me keep practicing on reading these Spanish words. And come class time, I was able to read the book better than even my teacher was. And so it explained to me that if I practice something enough with enough intensity, I'll become really, really good at it. And when I become really, really good, I get the pride of the result for going into it. So the same is true with fighting. And Alejandro, you make a great point. is when we go like, if it's not done perfectly, perfect just means giving your all. That's all perfect is to me. Is when you give 100%, don't give 99%, don't give 98%. And every time you do give 100%, you actually stretch into a new 100%. Like that's what people often miss is you're giving 100% so you can stretch into a new 100%.
Mm. Yeah, that's huge. And did you always thought like that, or you started to develop that during your career? How was that process?
It's a consistent development thing for sure. I look at my journey and say, because there's times where you feel great, like life's good, and you're ready to give 100%. Like I can't wait. And then there's times like, crap, I don't even know if I can give 50%. Life's really beating the crap out of me right now. Um, but what's so powerful about being able to give 100 when you don't want to give 100 builds that confidence muscle because now you know you can always do it even when you don't feel like it. And and it's actually more crucial to give it when you don't have it than to give it when you want to give it, if that makes any sense.
Yes, complete sense. And really, what you are saying it's amazing because really having this responsibility to do it and the accountability to do it is going to start to develop all the muscles. And as you say, like when you are like at your 100% and you start to do it, okay, you can do it, and it's not like stretching anything. But when you don't want to do it and you still do it, then things start to happen. So that is huge. Tell me a little bit of what you are doing now and how that connects exactly with what you were doing with fighting. Do you see some similarities in business right now? How you are helping them to really improve? How you are helping even in life? Because I know that you are working with both areas, like how to improve your life and your business, and they are together. And I don't start to like say that business is this side, life is in this side, and decide which of those you want to work with me.
Yeah, yeah. So ultimately, they're all more the same than they are different, but our minds work on specifics. So I love focusing on the mind piece. I love understanding why people do what they do and how to get them out of their own way. And so I always say if you change just one thing, it helps everything else change. So what I'm working with, like I'll give you an example, working with entrepreneurs and helping them get their time back, helping them leverage their time and build teams around them for their time. As a high performing athlete, they're both one and the same because ultimately everything comes down to what we're doing with the time that we have. Like, am I at the gym actually putting in the reps that I need to put in? Or am I out partying with my friends and drinking alcohol, not doing the thing, not going after the result that I'm looking to go after? So on the entrepreneurial journey, it's really stepping back and saying like, okay, do I have the right talent around me? Am I executing effectively? Is my aim right? Sometimes we're focusing on the wrong things and we're taking action on the wrong things. And am I managing my systems? Because if it's managed, it gets measured, and that's what it comes down to. Measuring certain things, measuring your KPIs, and knowing what's working and not what's not working, and actually looking at the data. Athletics is much the same. I couldn't go into a fight, lose the fight, and tell everyone, "Oh, I won that fight." Like, no, the tangible response is, in order to win, you have to have certain things. Well, entrepreneurship is much the same thing. In order to win, you have to meet certain criteria, and if you're meeting that criteria, you're winning. And if you're not, you're not.
And then you start to mix exactly family and the other part, because you can be winning in one side and losing in the other one. So at the end, what is the result? It's really losing.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I look at like that's such a great point because we talk about being in alignment. And alignment starts with, well, what's alignment mean to you? When a person can actually say, I have never heard anyone say, and it I could be wrong. But if someone's married, right, and they're super focused on their business and it's detracting from the relationship and their kids, I'm winning. I'm crushing it. Like, well, are you really? Why not have both? Why not have a healthy relationship with your wife, with your kids, and your business? And that's the question I always pose with people is sometimes we get in trouble and think, I I can't do this because I have to do this. And that's not how that works. I'll give an example. Just as I said, when I'm training, right, getting ready for a fight, I'm not drinking alcohol. But after the fight, I drink some alcohol. I just pick the time that I'm doing the thing that I'm doing. I like drinking alcohol from time to time. It's not something that I do on a regular basis, but I'll do it to celebrate from time to time. And when it's time to train, it's time to train. It's time to do things when they need to be done in an appropriate fashion to get the appropriate result.
Mm. And quick question. Okay, let's go a little bit like in the healing part. When you are injured in your fighting and you are ready for a fight or something, and suddenly you are injured, or I don't know if that happened to you in the past, how you treat that injury, because I would like to like do some. I like to work to talk with people like you that is in the sports, because it's easier to understand a lot of things that are happening in our life when you like do the relationship with one thing and the other. So what happened when you feel injured in one area, maybe one bone or muscle that is not exactly the right way? How do you start to treat that to start to improve, so then we can take that to our business again? Like when you are injured like this, it's going to
Yeah.
be this, you know.
Yeah. I mean, a great correlation. Whenever I had an injury, I would, well, one, I would always focus on not getting injured. And the way I did that, I had a chiropractor, I had a massage therapist, and I would see them on a regular basis. Now, when I would get injured, because it would happen, like when kicks and punches are being thrown, it's going to happen from time to time. And during my injuries, I would make sure to take care of the injury. And also, I liked staying in shape and keeping my conditioning up. So I would focus on what wouldn't aggravate the injury. Now, I did have one injury where I had to sit on the sidelines for quite a few weeks because it would have aggravated the injury. And even then, I would go and watch other people train because I know how powerful our minds are. And just watching other people, our minds can actually take on, like, if you think about moving a certain muscle, your muscle will actually move because your mind has thought about moving that muscle. It's very, very powerful stuff. And so within knowing that, I always marinate in whatever it is that I'm doing. As an entrepreneur, I marinate on being an entrepreneur. As a fighter, I marinated on being a fighter. And uh, when a business injury is occurring, I do the same thing. I go to the people who can help my business move forward appropriately.
And do you do at least in your business? Because I see the power on exactly what you are saying. Okay, to avoid injuries, I have a chiropractor, I have a massagist, and like a bundle of people that is helping me to be at my peak all the time. But are you doing something similar in your business, even that you are helping others, but to start to like, okay, now I see that I don't want to be like losing time, or I want to be at my peak. Are you doing that right now, or how is it for that part?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's important to always be adjusting and always, like, even as an athlete, you put in the reps and you're building those muscles. So as a business owner, you're building your business muscles. And it's important to consistently build those business muscles. And what is nice for an athlete, and it might depend on how I'm thinking about this, because entrepreneur, like a seasoned entrepreneur would know if their business was in trouble more so than a non-seasoned one. Now in a fight, you know you're in trouble when you're getting cut, kicked, and punched clean. Like you just know for sure, okay, I don't like the way that feels. Business is a little bit different. You can be in trouble and not even realize that your business is in trouble. And that's where it's one of those things that's so important and crucial, because I think there's more business injuries than there are fighting injuries, because fighters quickly know if they're doing the right thing or not. Whereas in business, you can kind of float around being a technician and thinking you're doing entrepreneurial things, and you're still just doing technician things and getting yourself in a lot of trouble. And you have no idea that it's happening, because you're not quite feeling the pain point until it's too late. You're like, oh crap, I messed up there.
Hmm, I love it. And another one, when you are like, because you are saying like maybe you know that somebody is taking you very bad in a fight, and suddenly I know, at least in the movies that I was looking, like for example in Rocky or those, like you have your mindset, and suddenly your heart start to come like, okay, I have to win this fight, and suddenly you can change that. Have you seen that in your fights, in some parts, or not?
In my fights in business and in fighting,
Let's talk first in fighting and then move it to business, because we are doing this correlation all the time with you, and I love it. That's why I'm asking you.
absolutely. Yeah, yeah. That has happened so many times in fighting. Like, because so when to get to the UFC, you have to fight like top competition. They don't, that's not a place that they just let you into, like, oh, hey, give it a try, see if you're any good. Like, you've already proven that you can fight with high level competitors. And I fought with some pretty tough people along the journey. And I've been tested a couple times. There was one fight, this came out of nowhere. So I wasn't even a 205 pounder. Like, there's weight classes here, and I'm a natural 185-pound fighter, right? And one fighter in the main card ended up pulling out because they were sick, and so they needed someone to bump up to the main card. And I was like, "Well, I'll do it if if the pay's right." And we came to an agreement. I'm like, "Let's do it." And I fought one of the biggest, burliest like 205ers that I could think of. It. I remember him jogging around the cage getting ready, and the cage was literally shaking. And it's just different weight classes. There's different weight classes for a reason, but I was ready to go, and it was what it was. Uh, it was a lot bigger than I thought he was going to be, even though I thought he was going to be big and strong as heck. It's always different when you're in there with them, and it I had a choice. Again, we talk about choice, and I could have walked away and said, "Oh, he's too big. I'm just going to lose." Like, but I didn't want to lose. I wanted to win. So that's what I focused on. I focused on getting that win, and I ended up submitting him in the second round. But what a confidence boost that absolutely was too, to go through a process like that. Not a, I didn't know what I was going to walk into. I didn't know what to expect, but I knew I had practiced for the moment that I didn't know that I was going to have. And I'll even quickly do a transition to entrepreneurship, because it's the same thing. Russell Brunson talks about just in time learning. Sometimes you're learning something and you learn it just when you need to know it, like just in that moment. And so that is in business. That's just the way that it goes sometimes. You don't know what's going to work when it's going to work every single time, but when it's game time and you have that skill set to show up in a way others didn't know that you could show up in, you end up shocking yourself and shocking the world.
Wow. And how did you feel like you grow after that, or how was that process of like feeling like, okay, I was in front of this, but when we you finish, what happened with you? What did you feel?
Oh, that was a huge one. Yeah, that was a big time celebration, because it showed um I had back to back matches like that, and it showed that I can always show up. I can always show up. And sometimes I'll win, Sometimes I'll lose. Sometimes I'll learn a lesson. But if I just show up, um, yeah, I can shock myself. And when I can shock, that's the fun part. That's the fun part of life, to go after something that other people say that's not possible, and then you make it possible, and all of a sudden it's cool for them and for you. You can all celebrate together.
No, and I love it. Really, if you see, even the question that I am asking you is talking about your beliefs and exactly how you believe in you and how you start to move, how you start to show up, how you start to like work in everything that you are doing, how to try to become perfect with all the training that you are doing. And at the end, life and business is exactly the same. Are you doing the training? Are you like trying to improve in everything that you are doing? Sometimes I'm talking about even with a lot of entrepreneurs, like they are so focused in the thing that they are doing and in the technical skills that they forget about the business skills. Like, okay, yes, I entered this business because I love helping people with this area and I am working on this area and I am improving this area. But what is happening with the business skills? What's happening with the other skills? And what you are saying here is, okay, to be a fighter, and especially in UFC, you need to focus in a lot of muscles, not like only your fists. Like I'm going to to do something good here, but you have to have good legs. You have to have like a full body, and at the end, in business, is the same.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, thank you, Clifford. What is one thing that you will say, like, okay, maybe you listen to this 30 minutes that we have been talking here. Maybe you didn't listen everything, but I want you to live with this phrase or this thing that you need to have in your life, and I want to remember this phrase or this thing.
Yeah. What's interesting, so no matter what I do in my life, I had two quote not quotes, but two sayings that really register with me. One is, when you're not where you want to be, step back. Because oftentimes we're trying to put out all of those fires and we're running forward, putting a fire out. And sometimes we just have to step back and look at the bigger picture. Like, why am I taking the action that I'm taking? And the other one, this one's from Rich Lifton. Absolutely love this coach. But he says, if you have a dream that you can achieve by yourself, you're not dreaming big enough. And that one hits my soul every time, because it reminds me to always dream as big as I can, and always bring a bunch of dream chasers together to make big outcomes and big impacts.
Awesome, I love it. So, how they can connect with you? They can work with you. Any question that people can have?
Yeah. Yeah. So you can get a hold of me in Facebook Messenger. You can also email me at cliffordstarks1@gmail. And you can also go to my LinkedIn page and connect with me there.
Awesome, Clifford. Thank you very much. This was amazing. I love everything today, and we have that one person telling us the same thing. Great conversation, and we are going to be showing up. So thank you again, Clifford, for showing up
Yes.
today. It was
Thank you.
amazing, and thank you for all these uh, questions and answers that you get. It was great.
Yeah. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you all, and see you next time.
Have a great day, everyone.